Test.
Go on. Hey, I put it. Just put it. Just see.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for being here. It's so nice to see such a full room and everybody here to speak about such an important topic as women's homelessness. First of all, I would like to thank the MEP Alessandra Moretti for trusting us and for invaluable collaboration in organizing today's event. Your support and commitment to addressing women's homelessness have been instrumental in bringing this important issue to the forefront. We are grateful for your partnership and look forward to continue the vital work together. A special thanks also to her assistant, Francesca Garbagnati, who also helped us a lot to organize this event. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank all the speakers for their tireless work on women's homelessness and for joining us here in Brussels to share their knowledge and experience. And I will introduce them shortly. I hope today's discussion sparks insights and further dialogue, ultimately leading to more gender-focused policies to address homelessness effectively. EPOC Practice, the work stream for mutual learning and capacity building within the European Platform on Combating Homelessness, collaborated with Fianza Women to organize this event to highlight the urgent need for gender policies in this new EU mandate. The conversation about women's homelessness must occupy policy discussion combat invisibility, and help achieve our goal for ending homelessness. If we are to reach the Lisbon Declaration's aim to eradicate homelessness by 2030, we must adopt gender-specific policies to address the unique marginalization faced by women. To do so, we have organized a training on this topic, which occurred yesterday and today, where policymakers and practitioners came together to learn more about this phenomenon. The training has been a success and has received a wide number of applications. Further, this event in the European Parliament, this room full of people, showed that there is willingness and commitment to end homelessness, without forgetting to look at the issue through a gender-informed lens. After the opening speech of our host MEP Alessandra Moretti and our President Jules Valdam, we'll begin a panel discussion exploring women's homelessness from 4 interrelated perspectives. They will come shortly to join us, but for now, thank you all for being here and for attending, and for the people that are also joining online. I hope you find today's event informative and impactful. Alessandra Moretti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Silvia. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming today to address a critical issue of women homeless in Europe. Although this issue is frequently overlooked, it's not just a minor social problem. It represents a serious extremity that bears out immediate attention and action. When we think about homelessness, we frequently think about single adult men. This narrow perspective not only distorts the reality of homelessness, but also obscures the unique challenges women face. Poverty is a major issue that affects women much more than men, making them more likely to become homeless. Numerous homeless women avoid shelters because of safety concerns, relying instead on informal arrangements with friends and family. This reflects society's deep-rooted attitudes that marginalize women's experiences and produce a cycle of misunderstanding, making their situation invisible in statistics and debates. Imagine how it would be if you wouldn't have a home, a place to keep yourself warm, or simply a bathroom where to wash yourself. Even worse than this, what if you didn't have the basic hygiene products like pads and tampons? When women don't have a stable home, they face the dilemma of whether to spend their limited resources on food or prioritize personal hygiene. Every time this basic need is not met, the sense of violation is reinforced, reminding them of their struggle to maintain their dignity. Homeless women must also face their past reality, like the fact that many of them are victims of domestic violence. Many times there is a clear and predominant link between these. Often women try to escape from a violent man that could be husband, partner, or a father, cannot find resources to build a new, safe life alone. This is why I always repeat how important it is for women to be financially independent. In the fight against violence, we must understand that furnishing safe housing is an essential part of this fight. These issues cannot be treated in isolation. They are linked, and our response must reflect the difficulty of this situation. In this case, education plays a key role, especially about mental health and healthy relationships. This helps both men and women learn how to prevent violence before it starts. Promoting a culture of respect can help break the cycles that lead to homelessness and abuse. As member of the Socialists and Democrats Group, I believe that housing is a fundamental right. We have a moral obligation to advocate for policies that actively address homeless women's needs. We must remove the obstacles that stop women from asking for help and make sure support services are available to help them recover. To do this, we have to take action to domestic violence and poverty, which affect women more than men. We must support programs that improve women's social protection and create economic opportunities, ensuring they have the resources to thrive. Addressing homelessness requires not only economic solutions, but also gender-sensitive approaches. We need more research to understand women's experiences and create effective target interventions. Together, we must push for systemic reforms that break the cycle of poverty and violence, ensuring lasting change for women. Let's work together to build a future where every woman has a safe place and the support she needs to succeed. Let's work together. As we said before, you need me as politician, I know, but I need you. I need your support because your support is really, really fundamental and important in this fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alessandra Moretti, for these really important and strong words and for bringing this topic and these words inside this building. It's really important for us, and I'm sure we will help in this and support you for this collaboration. Now we would like to pass the word to our President of FEANZA, Jules Van Dam.
Welcome, everyone. I would like to start by thanking Alessandra Moretti for hosting this event and also for her words on poverty and housing, which comes straight from the heart. Also, I'd like to thank the members of the FEM Committee and all members of the European Parliament for attending this meeting. We are very grateful that you are contributing to this event. Your knowledge and support is essential to bring women's homelessness forward and help ending it. I'm representing FEANZA today. We are the only European NGO focusing exclusively on the fight against homelessness. Our ultimate goal is an end to homelessness in Europe. We work together with our members across Europe to share knowledge, promote best practices, and influence European policies regarding homelessness and social inclusion. We live in a housing emergency. Today, Europe counts over 1,200,000 rough sleepers, people in night shelters and people in temporary accommodation. They are denied the right for a safe home, and women are disproportionately affected. But their homelessness is less visible and therefore does not receive the necessary attention. We see in practice a lot of homeless women hiding in relations with a strong tendency towards violence and prostitution, and often it is more than just a tendency. Our aim with the event is to raise awareness on women's homelessness and highlight that it's a gendered issue. There are a number of myths surrounding women's homelessness. One such myth is that women's homelessness is a marginal issue and that women are less likely to experience long-term and repeated homelessness. Unfortunately, figures reveal a very different reality. Women are just as likely to experience homelessness as men are. Without appropriate interventions like gendered and trauma-informed care, women have a high likelihood for experiencing multiple episodes of homelessness. Much homelessness with women comes together with domestic violence. The homelessness comes out of the violent relation, or women have no opportunity but to fly again into a new relation with domestic violence. 3 years ago, the European Parliament, together with national governments, other EU institutions and stakeholders, has signed the Lisbon Declaration and undertook to promote and support policies aiming at ending homelessness by 2030. We in Fianza believe that this is an achievable policy goal, but it requires immediate support and commitment from policymakers. We also believe that ending homelessness means ending it for all, including women who are often invisible in homelessness on the streets and in homeless policies. Thank you for your attention and thank you for your commitment and engagement. I hope you find the discussions meaningful and will take away lots of ideas and inspiration for future action for change. Oh.
Thank you so much. And I would like to suggest a change on the table because we don't fit all. So our 4 panelists will join us. We have as a panelist Boroka Feher, which is a policy officer I will try my best with the Hungarian pronunciation of BMS Sky. She will share some insights from her work with women experiencing homelessness in Hungary. Then I would like to welcome T. Zsuden. She is an expert by experience at Epoch Practice and in Finland in the NGO No Fix Adopt. We also have as a speaker, we were supposed to have, as you saw in the program, Patricia Buzenertea Barrio. Unfortunately, and she's sent her apologies, she cannot be here because of the difficult situation that Valencia is facing at the moment and the entire region. She had to stay in Spain, but luckily, and we are really thankful for this, her deputy, Maria Dolores Ruiz Bautista, she managed to get here, and come here, and she is the deputy director on Family Diversity and Social Services at the Spanish Ministry for Social Rights. And she will intervene on the topic of their ministry that developed specific policies to address women's homelessness inside the Spanish National Strategy on Combating Homelessness. And lastly, we are joined by our policy officer on women's homelessness, Dalma Fabian, who will help us to connect everything, all the different experience of the different perspective to what the EU can do. Thank you all for being here. And I would like to start with you, Boroka.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's a bit intimidating to be facing so many people. And obviously, you also know a lot about women's homelessness. And Ms. Moretti has said most of what I'm going to say anyway. But please bear with me. I'm going to talk about the service provider perspective because I work in a service provider organization, BMSK, in Hungary, Budapest, which is not an NGO, but the City of Budapest's homeless service. But it's pretty much the same perspective. But also I'm a member of Fianza Women's Network, which is a community of practice. So I'm going to bring some good examples from research, policy, and practice, which is going to come from Hungary, a little bit, but mostly from the community of practice of Fianza Women that many of you are members of here. And if you are not yet, I recommend that you join. And we're going to show you some good places to look for information because obviously these presentations are not going to tell you everything that we know. So I'm going to talk about research, policy, and practice and how these three are often gender blind when it comes to homeless women. And this is not going to be an exhaustive list of how they are gender blind, and also the good examples are not going to be covering everything. So sorry if I missed your projects, for example, but please feel free to share about them afterwards. And when it's research that is gender blind, it means that we don't ask gendered questions. We don't ask about issues that might be specific to the needs and experiences of homeless women. And the first proof of that is that often, in most countries, we don't have reliable data about women's homelessness. And there are many different situations of homelessness. So the next slide it shows you ethos that you cannot see, but so I'm going to please take a look afterwards if you are not familiar yet with the ethos definitions. But for example, in Hungary, we would have a knowledge about how many women are using services, homelessness services. But if you look at all the different categories, not all of these categories would be looked at when we are looking for homeless women. So in Hungary, for example, women's shelters for victims of domestic abuse, that would be a different category. We have no idea how many women are accommodated there, like we, being the Hungarian researcher. If I try to get data, I would, but they are not taken into account when talking about homelessness. Or also when somebody is with their children, so in a refuge with children of mothers or with whole families, they are also not taken into consideration when talking about homelessness. And if you have a town where you don't have any services for homeless women, no accommodation services, then you are not going to find any homeless women in those services that don't exist. So you would think there are 0 homeless women. So obviously, just knowing how many beds there are for women sort of predetermines how many women you can find. And then also if you do the street counts, often street counts are also very inaccurate because women tend to be more invisible and they tend to sleep in places where men don't. So if we are gender blind in how we look, we are not going to find the right answers. And one of the good practices that I wanted to show is a London Women's Census. The report and the link that you have there is for the 2023 census they did, which was the 2nd year. And I think it's a very interesting practice because in London, in certain boroughs, they had 0 homeless women sleeping rough in previous censuses. And some of the researchers started to ask the question, but how can that be? Then there are more women living in poverty generally. So they did a scheme where they first interviewed women who had slept rough, and they interviewed them about how they slept rough when they were sleeping rough. And then they built the research around these experiences. So not just looking for women sleeping in pavements and at the corridors, but in more hidden places or in different places. And then for the count itself, it was outreach teams working in pairs, and at least one of them was a woman. So if there was a woman sleeping rough, they might not be so intimidated. And what a surprise, they found 700 women that were counted instead of, I don't know, 115. And actually now in the report, if you read it, they say that 120 of these 700 women were walking around the whole night. They wouldn't be visible for anyone doing a traditional count. So if you want to find women, you have to do a gendered lens when trying to do research. And then also you have to ask the questions that are specific about women's experiences if you are to understand not just their employment status and health status, but something that is more special about women. So one of these areas is women's specific health issues. And I'm not just meaning pregnancy and birth control, which are not very women specific, but it's not something that usually research would ask, even men. Then there is safety and security, and it's partly within services. Many of the services that are offered to homeless women are mixed, which might not be so safe, but also on the street, many homeless women might not feel safe. So I think it's an area to explore. Then the strengths and risks of intimate partner relationships, because obviously it can support a woman if she has a loved one who is on her side, but it can also be a risk and make it more difficult to find a way out of homelessness. Then there is the whole issue of motherhood, whether a woman is living together with her children or living separated from her children. Most of the homeless women that I've met are mothers. They could have grown children, they could have small children, but often we look at them as single women or as women in couples. And actually now I'm looking at fatherhood, and it seems that fatherhood is much less important to the man that I met than motherhood, even if they have children. So I think this is something very specific about women. And then the way a woman looks, it is important for everyone how they look, but if you live on the street and you don't have a place to wash yourself, like Ms. Moretti said, it might really affect your self-worth, and it might really make it difficult to access services. And this is the screenshot of a project that Fianca and BMSKI and some other partners like Kraj Udlice and the Y Foundation, we have done together. and it was about women's homelessness. And this is an Erasmus Plus project. I'm a great fan of Erasmus Plus projects because you can do mutual learning. You find a topic and then you explore with your other partners. And unfortunately, the slide is too small for me to see, but maybe you can. These are some of the themes that we came up with the partners. Each partner went to their own women that they work with to ask what are the themes that are relevant to them. And this, it's really what I said before. They said homeless women and children, so the relationship with their children was very important. The health issues that are specific to women, emotional and physical safety, relationships, and intimate relationships partly, but also relationships with others, and participation and peer support were themes that were important to women. And I will show this website again, but now to the next slide, please. And then when policy is gender blind, it means that services are not necessarily designed to meet the needs of the women. So even if there are services that the women can access, they might not be the type that women want, or they actually might be excluded from these services. And the first item on the list is intersectionality. And it means that, for example, if it's a women's refuge for domestic violence victims, but you have substance abuse issues on the side, or you have mental health issues on the side, they might not take you. Actually, if you're not from middle class, but coming from a Roma community, they might not accept you. And then you are homeless, even if you have the same issues, because you are just too complex needs. Or the other one is disability. In Hungary, for example, there are not so many places for disabled people in the homelessness sector. But if you are a woman and are disabled, there are even less. So if you are not a typical woman or an atypical woman with many needs, it might be making it difficult for accessing services. Or the lack of women-only services might also keep women away from mixed services that they might not deem safe enough. Or actually, as I said, in certain towns where you don't have any accommodation service for women, they might not have any service for the night. The issue of couples, it makes it more difficult for some women to go into a shelter if her partner cannot come with. And I don't know how it is in your countries, but in Hungary, there are not so many places that accept couples. In the capital, there are a few, in the countryside, much less, which keeps people on the street. And then there is the issue of social housing. In Hungary, we don't have so much social housing, and it's unlikely that a single woman would access social housing. But from our partners from the projects, what I hear is that if you are a single woman, you might get social housing, but it would be a bedsit, just a one-room apartment, and it wouldn't be big enough to bring your children. But if you are single, that's all you get. But then if you want to be reunited with your children, it's too small, so you're not going to get the reunification. So really just the fact that the policy is gender blind, it takes a single woman just as if she didn't have children. It means that you are not going to live the life you want, and it makes it more difficult for you. And these are two good examples. One of them is St. Mungo's Homeless Couples and Relationships Toolkit. It's about how to design services where both people in a couple are supported, and what to do in situations where you feel that there might be violence in the couple, but both the man and the woman are the users of the service, or the perpetrator and the survivor. And I think it's a very useful piece of info about how to build your service around a way that it's safe for everyone and it supports everyone. And the other one is a French study that was done in mixed services, in 3 mixed services in Paris. And they explored the issues of safety and security that the women using those mixed services face. And actually what is very interesting, they also interviewed the staff, most of whom are women, about their feelings of safety and security within those places where 300 or 350 users were present. Next slide, please. And if you look at this second one, it's really interesting because it also has some tips for the physical creation of spaces, how to create spaces that are safe for everyone using those services. And now the third one is about gendered sensitive practice and how to make sure that you work with women in a way that is supportive. Some of the good examples were having women's spaces. So even if you are working in a mixed service, but having some designated areas where only women can enter, This is especially important if it's a mixed service where women don't have their own bedroom but share it in a dormitory setting, but also where women could stay alone in their bedroom. Often in the mixed services, people find that they are just running back to their bedroom because they don't feel safe. So have some places to hang out. In Budapest, we did a survey with 300 women, and 70% of them said that they would prefer to have day centers for women. They might not always use those day centers, but even for day centers, they would like to have women-only spaces. And if that's not possible, it's even an idea to have like certain time zones set up for women. Like on Wednesday, it's for women only, or in 2 afternoons a week, it's for women only. Trauma-informed services are very important, and I think we're going to hear more about that. We have a gynecological service in Budapest, which was set up especially for homeless women with this trauma-informed approach, where all the female doctors and the nurses and the social workers had been trained so that they receive women with tact and dignity and awareness of all the issues they might have faced. Peer support and involvement in recovery is also something that many services are using. So building women together with the energy of other women. As I said, motherhood is something that should be tackled, and there should be emphasis on supporting women to keep in contact with their children, to think about whether they want to keep in contact with their children if they have any. And if they want to keep contact with those children, how is that possible, and give every support. That could be financial support to go and visit them, or it could be even offering spaces where they can bring the children for a weekend or for a holiday, just to be with them so they get the practice of being a mother again. Another issue might be women-specific protocols, so asking the right questions, but also, for example, knowing how to work with a couple. And also, as you have been, some of you have been trained in the past 2 days to receive more training for staff on all kinds of issues that are relevant to women. So what is needed? I think that we need a gendered lens in research, which is going to be then a push for policy change. We need to create services that are attractive to women, so they are not wandering around at night, but are turning to those services, and they receive the right type of support. And we obviously need to offer ways out of homelessness that are built around those needs. So when we talk about housing first, and the Berlin example is really good, that it's not just a house where a woman is put and then it's housing first for women, but they get all the support that is necessary to keep that housing and to keep people they don't want to out of that housing. And then really my last slides are about mutual learning. So I've been involved in a lot of mutual learning, and I think it's a great way to be inspired. It's wonderful when there are face-to-face meetings where you can visit a city and see some good examples. But if that's not possible, I recommend that you go on the FEANSA website. And there are all kinds of interesting webinars available about different topics that are relevant to women. And if you can join it in lifetime, you can ask questions. If you miss it, you can watch it afterwards and still get the information and get interesting contacts. This is another piece of project that we did together with FEANSA, FIOPS, I don't know if they are still here, and some women's organizations, so from the domestic violence sector. And you have the link there to visit the FEANSA website for all kinds of things. But this is a guide to improving trauma and gender-informed responses to women experiencing homelessness and gender-based violence. So it's about how to make your homeless service for women even better than it is already. And we have this available in French and Italian and Hungarian. It's also there in English. And the project that I first showed you, the Erasmus project about women's homelessness, if you go and visit the website, we had different meetings in the different themes. For example, this one is about participation and client involvement. But what I think was really good is that we had the possibility to invite other people to come and speak to us about their experience. So not just the 9 partners that we had, but for example, for participation, it was Jako Doma, a Czech grassroots organization who could talk about their work and how they try to strengthen homeless women's presence in their services and in other areas of their lives. And the new project that we just started September 1st is also an Erasmus project. It's called Women's Voices. And it's about gathering photos about safety and security issues. You see the partners there. I don't know if you can see them too well, but in the brown, you have Somos, and they are a Portuguese grassroots organization founded by homeless women themselves. So they are giving us the peer viewpoint, and all the homeless service providers that you see in blue and well, green, the experts, they are coming from different areas. So it could be housing first, outreach, day centers, and we have a university partner to build training around how to ask homeless women what they think about their security issues and how to improve the services using their insight. And then finally, there is the Feanza Flash. So when our website is ready for our project and you can read all the wonderful things that we do, we are going to put a news bit in the Feanza Flash, but I also recommend that you use the Feanza Flash for telling us what you do in your lives and in your practice. And it's also where you can find links about good practices, about the webinars, or about any projects that might be happening that could be useful for your organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Boroka, for this presentation, to raise all these really interesting points and to give us so many resources. I'm sure they are really, really useful. And now I would like to pass the floor to T. We will share a bit about her experience on women's homelessness.
Hello, and nice to be here. I'm a little bit nervous, I have to say. I was, before my own, also homeless woman on the streets. I saw so much violence. I came from country at EU where women's getting pissed too much and too often. So we started with my friend who working with me in COVID time. We saw that situation. In Finland, we don't have any kind of support women who is on the streets and living that violence. Whoever do it with her, that. So I don't have any kind of support house where I send people who living on the streets and using substances also. Because I understand we have to support kids many things, but we can't forget women also and say because kids. It was like 2.5 years it took a time, and now we have a project for women who using substances and need support house places. I think that is not enough. We have two place women who feeling violence when they are homeless and using substances. 2 place. In Finland, people live in, I think so, this 0.5 million or something like that. 2 place. So we need this kind of places. We can heal women's mental, because nowadays still women's raising their kids. When they seeing so much bad things, they start to talk with the kids. Be careful, and what is then happens? Then coming kids who already scared almost everything. So this is a one point, what I think so we need more. And I have a really long speech here, but I think so I don't read it because almost every details what I wrote there is already said. So not so all, but really many. I think so we need some kind of support and trauma sensitive projects more, and our work is doing this everything, everything to the people so they understand which situation those women living in there. In Finland, we have also those units for women, but a really big problem is this child custody doesn't want to keep those kids in this kind of places. I understand it, but it's not so good for kids, and it's not so good for those women who want to go in front towards their life. So probably we need, I think so, we need this kind of work with own people's situation where they're living, their needs. Because family who needs home or living on the streets, or some with some family members, but they don't have own place, have really different needs. But women have who doesn't have babies, or maybe living with a relationship. Now I'll try to a little bit read here, because like I said, almost everything came through other panelists said already. So I think I take it here. At the beginning of the pandemic, I worked at the day center for homeless women. That was a project with Y Foundation. There was a Blue Ribbon Foundation, our NGO, No Fix It Above, and I think so there was 10 more group with us, making these points what women need invisible. There was many expert by experience, and really many women says they are much easier talking about their own situation to the people who before living same kind of situation. This is normal human doing these kind of things. I understand people who have same struggles or same life advance or something. You listen today differently, and you understand when you talk with somebody, you don't even need sometimes words. You understand it, what the person wants to say to you. So I think so. The best, what was that MEP project, what was 2018 to 2020, it was that we can show that thing we need if we want to fight against homelessness. We need peer workers. We need those people who was there, because we understand differently those situations. Sometimes I'm going with some woman, they need some support or healthcare or something. We are going there. There was a nurse or that person who we going to check, who we going to zone. So they started thinking about this woman doesn't want any help. She's late always, or she doesn't look to the eyes when she talking about. And this was a point when I said, maybe she's tired, or do you look she's not okay. something is wrong right now. This kind of experience we can't teach in the schools because it's coming from a live experience. This is a miracle. I'm here talking about to you, this woman homeless situation, because I was almost died really many times. And it was good time. I hope I died. I think I'm not having any kind of human rights. I'm nothing. But then some other women, older women who was living same kind of life said to me, think twice, you are still young. That was like 10 years ago. I don't feel so young anymore, but they say to me, you're still young. Thinking about it, you can handle this kind of life. That's okay, but this kind of life doesn't need you. Do it something better, or you came same of us. And I don't see anything bad those women's situation, but this make me thinking about it differently. I want help those women who are still there. They have also same human rights what everybody has. They need support. They need own place, and that own place is woman really important. When woman get own place, when she get own peace, first thing, but immediately women ask for, can I put my own stuff in here? Can I put tables and everything? Can I do that? It's really important, woman, really important. But that when you get the house or get that apartment, it doesn't fix everything. It fixes that you have that home. But if you are so long time on the streets, it took really long time understanding new ways of life, acting and speaking, and sometimes I have still struggles about that because it's not so easy when you live in your whole life and you're feeling you're nothing. It took really, really long time to heal. But when you get that support, you get people around you who believes you, and they give it to you the time showing your skills, and you can be that person who everybody trusts. I say somebody's maybe doing some stupid things in that situation, but I promise that almost every people, when you trust them, they want to be that trust, that they don't trust for nothing. I think so. Some kind of hope, not maybe better, but different, helps women. I'm sorry, I'm almost speak Finnish. I'm woke up 4 o'clock, so I'm like a little bit tired. So I think I taking little part of here still. Here, this is almost said already, but I think this is really important. I think it will be necessary for each EU country to start a nation survey how different specific groups of homeless people in their country feel they need help and how this can be responded at the national level. I believe that the European Parliament should organize this research work in order to obligate to the member states to start the REACH. At regional level, each member state has its own specific needs and its own service systems. So I think we don't find that solution if we say everybody have to do the same, because every country is different. In Europe, we have different social systems, we have different almost everything. So that's why every country have to start their own research, how these women, these homeless people need their support. If we want to change something, we have to start differently. It's the only way. I think so. This is what I still want to say. How I know this? I have been a homeless woman on the street myself. But after assessing support and help and finding the right time and recognizing my needs, I have been able to do something that I thought was impossible when I was on the streets. I'm talking to you about why recognizing of women and other specific groups in homelessness work is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, T, for bringing the lived experience and for your courage in being here and speak at this event. Now I will pass the word to Maria Dolores Ruiz Bautista.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with you, sharing our experience in Spain. I congratulate FEANSA and the people who have been intervening in this roundtable, because I have learned a lot from you. And then now I'm here representing the government of Spain. My general director couldn't come because of the events happening very recently in Spain. In 4 regions are affected to this Dana event that happened. And then, but now I am here. At least I am here, and I'm going to try to explain or to show a little bit our experience in Spain. We are very committed with homelessness in general, but also with women's homelessness. And then, we recently approved a national strategy for combating homelessness in Spain to 2023-2030, approved by the government last year in July. Reflects the government commitment to promote policies that improve the situation of homeless individuals. This strategy fulfills the principle of the European Pillar of Social Rights and aligns with the goals of the European Platform for Combating Homelessness, adopting prevention, access to housing, and disinstitutionalization as guiding principle for action aimed at addressing and reducing homelessness in our country. This strategy will strengthen the necessity of collaboration among all the key stakeholders, not only the Ministry of Social Rights, Consumer Affairs and 2030 agenda, where we belong, but we coordinate the national strategy with many other stakeholders. And also, ministries, NGOs, regions, local authorities, experts, many things involved in the elaboration and the implementation of the strategy 2030. And we focus on all situations of housing exclusion covered by the heat typology that he was mentioned before, but primarily on the situation included on the categories corresponding to homelessness: roofless and houseless. Only these categories we conduct in this strategy, although we are connected very, very closely with the Ministry of Housing in order to go further. But this study is more, I would say, in this Ministry of Social Services, then this is the categories of the ethos that we conducted in this strategy. Well, I would like to say something before to explain a little bit the context of the women homelessness in Spain. There are two official ways of measuring homelessness in Spain by means of surveys carried out by the National Institute of Statistics. Okay, one of them is a survey to the homelessness in shelters in temporary accommodation. They are interviewed. We provide with the center that are providing services to the homelessness people, to the homeless people. Sorry, and then the National Institute of Statistics does these surveys to these centers. And also there is another one which is surveys to the homeless people themselves. You understand? Survey directly to the people who are staying in the streets or who are staying in a accommodation, a temporary accommodation, a shelter or a center, day center, for example, or housing first also. People who are living in a house, but in this housing first methodology, you know. And then this is the service we have as official statistics. It's true that many entities do services and an investigation and researchers or sociological studies on many other source of information that give us, and then we take into account. But the official are this. And also in the ministry, in addition of this, in 2023, last year, we, in the ministry, we organized a complementary means of counting people which suffer from homelessness, and is through the nightly homelessness counts. Okay, I don't know. I'm translating into Spanish, Spanish into English, but I think you know what I mean. Okay, and then this process we prepare a methodology, common methodology in all at national level, and then we offer this methodology to the region and the region to the local authorities in order to every 2 years to put in practice this methodology in order to count people living in the streets or in a temporary accommodation. And then last year was the first survey, and this year will be the following one. No? And then according to these surveys, or these means of counting people on homelessness, we can see the last survey, the proportion of homeless women in Spain has increased to 23.3% compared to 90. This means, I will explain with my own words. In Spain, with this survey in 2022, we had 28,552 people homeless who suffer from homelessness. From them, 23.3% are women. Okay. And 76% are men. Okay, and then from the previous interview of the previous survey in 2012 to this is the increase that we have seen. How can we analyze this? Perhaps there are different causes, no? One of them that now there are more knowledge about homeless people. In 2012, we didn't have so many source of information, and we didn't have so many services to provide that we provide to the homelessness people, because, for example, now this survey of Center of Homelessness, homeless people, offer 26,690 places, nearly the same people who are homeless. Do you understand? Then we offer a lot of services to homeless, and then more people are, what do you say, how do you say, emerge, no? Not because there are more homelessness, but because they are more properly counted. Do you understand? I don't know. This is our reflection we do, but okay. But we have to center in women. Sorry, because I speak in general. Okay. From the places I have said, 32%, 32.8% are women in these centers. Okay, and the majority of the women who are in this situation is between 45 years old and 64 years old. The 47.2% are Spanish, and the rest are foreigners or with a foreigner's background or something like that. And the 38.8% have been more than 3 years in the streets in this situation. It's a very quite high data. And then okay, I will continue with the data because I try to explain all the things, but it's better to know, to explain the data, and then we can reflect on that. It's very important, the increase of people who have been, who is in the homelessness situation, only from 1 to 6 months. This increase has been, as you see here, 68.61%, but in women, much more. The increase is very, very high. Okay. This data means that perhaps, the crisis, perhaps the problem with the housing, the access to housing in Spain, you know. The next slide, but I think that I have here I was trying to say that in Spain we have, as you know, many of you know that we have a big problem with housing. The prices are very, 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 very high. The prices, the rent to rent house is very, 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 very expensive, and the prices are very elevated. And then many problems come from this crisis of the housing, no, in Spain. Okay. Okay. The thing is that with that data, we see that there are not, perhaps there are many places or many services provided, but they are not enough, or they are not, they are failing, to respond to women with complex needs, because as many other people have said in this table, women suffer from some features that men don't have. For example, is the 34% of the people, of the women who are in the streets, in the nightly homeless count, for example, in the recent data, 34% are here because of relational factors, depending on gender balance, marital problems, something related with their sex. And then this is an additional cause for a woman that is not presented perhaps for a man. And then, for example, we in this services, we can know that the homeless women have a diagnosed illness in 43.6% of cases, much more from down in the case of men, and also report suffering more from depressive symptom more than men. Also have been victims to a greater extent to insults and threats and sexual assaults. This is the data we have in the last survey in 2022. The next slide. Okay, as I said before, serious housing crisis in Spain, particularly affecting renting, and also to buy a house is very, very, very expensive, mainly in cities as Madrid, Barcelona, many big cities. 6 out of 10 tenants are women. 84% of tenants between 18 and 24 years old are women. This is data of Fotocasa. I said not only the data from the surveys, but the official surveys, but it's also we take data from other sources. Female-headed households are more likely to be close to the poverty line. 60% after paying rent. Provivienda is another entity very important in Spain. And women have lower salaries and less capacity to generate income, so that they have objectively fewer resources of asset housing. Someone said that financial autonomy is so important in this matter because they don't have any other resources to live. Perhaps they depend on their husband or their partner and so on, and they don't have the support, enough support to survive by themselves. This is a very big problem, and you can see here in the figure the line of how the prices of the rent a house is increasing every year and every year. And this is very, very graphic, and you can see how is the problem in Spain. The next slide is about violence. This is some data. 60% is very, very high data of homeless women have experienced gender-based violence. This is a data of the Asociación Aires, another NGO, another association in Spain, very important because we can take another source. 22% of homeless women highlight that having suffered gender-based violence has been the main cause in their situation, and serious difficulty for women who suffer from gender-based violence to access alternative house, I said before. Okay, the next slide. So I'm a little bit slowly, I think. Okay, and then we have the strategy is the main instrument, the main tool we have to tackle this problem of homelessness in general, and especially of women homelessness. I remember when we elaborated the strategy, we had a lot of meetings with many stakeholders, ministries, region, and NGOs. And some of the NGOs said, you have to specifically show the problem that women have in this area, the violence they suffer, the less resource to live by themselves, and so on. And you have to focus on that matter. And then we did, we tried to do it. And then well, the objective of Lisbon Declaration, we have the main objective of the strategy is to finish with homelessness at 2030, as the Lisbon Declaration says, and also the platform for combating homelessness says as well. And then we focus on prevention, as I said before. We have financed many projects with some NGOs, with funds of the Recovery and Resilience Funds from the European Commission. We have dedicated some money of this money, the money for these funds, to innovative projects in prevention, because it's the best way to tackle the problem and to face the problems, is to prevent before young people, or women or whatever, but mainly young people as less they are in the street or in home in that situation, sooner it's going to be recovered for their lives. And then we focus a lot in prevention and committed to the disinstitutionalization and transformation of homeless care sector. We also have a strategy on disinstitutionalization, and one of this group of people who have to be disinstitutionalized are homeless people. And then we have projects in these directions. And it proposes an integral vision that articulates the care system to the full exercise of citizens and the full employment of human rights. We base our study in human rights. It's we have to do it because it's a question of human rights. And then this is very obvious, but it has to say in the strategy. And also committed to the generation of knowledge, innovation, and evidence-based decision. This is what I was saying before, a new project of nightly homeless counts every 2 years to complement the service, the official service of the National Institute of Statistics. The other slides. And this is the principle of the strategy: prevention, early care, I said, personalization, person-centered care, and self-determination. The focus is in the person, and all the things have to go around that person. And not the end, no the opposite. The person has to go to different services in order to improve their life. No, it's the opposite, of course. Housing center, we put the focus on housing. We need social housing. We need the housing fairs programs. This is the main goals. And gender and intersectional approach. She explained about intersectional approach. Yes, that is one of the pieces of our strategy. Innovation, of course, and public accountability. We have many projects financed to the NGOs, many programs with funds of the European Commission. With in my department, we finance some projects for the homelessness and so on. But the thing is that all the experience we have, it has to be a view of public responsibility, accountability. We know that, or we are convinced that public institution, public accountability must be the rule in this matter. And then the next slide. And well, I will give you an example of the objective alignment for action that we have in our strategy, and then we are implemented. We did very recently the report in 2023, and now we are preparing the report in 2024, things that have been done in lines with the objective of the strategy and how they are implemented, the things, okay. And then in preventing the chronification of the street homeless, I said before. We have some relationship with ministry or of health, education, employment, and so on. And then to try to do some protocols of collaboration between departments in order that a person who is perhaps going to be without any accommodation in near future, then how collaborate the services in order to prevent that this person, or if this person is in the street or in this situation for 1 month, 2 months, until 6 months, we have to intervene very quickly in order to not to be chronified this situation. In the end, to provide a rapid response to a street situation, in women, of course, included the next one. Also, protecting the right to housing. We have a very close cooperation with the Ministry of Housing in order to protect the right or to put in practice the right of housing. In our case, in our constitution, it's not a fundamental right, housing, but it's a right. not fundamental. There have to be some laws to develop the right of housing, not only because I say I have the right to a house, I have a house. Is that not the case? But we try to that the house is a right, and then we collaborate with the housing department in order to build more social house, to control the prices of the rent of the market, the rented market, and so on. And okay, preventing discrimination, criminalization, hate crimes. Well, some people spoke about that, and then we try to prevent that. We have in some service, we have introduced this element, discrimination, because many times it's a case of discrimination. For example, poverty is a poverty or extreme poverty. People who are in the street are suffering from discrimination a lot. And then we try to fight against discrimination. The Equality Ministry for Equality as the main mission of that, but the ministries collaborated with this. And also fighting against addiction, disabilities, well, not to protect or to give services for these people, and protection for gender-based violence, trafficking, and prostitution. Some other people said that the same, and we did these actions in our strategy. And the next one, providing housing solution, and personal support, and improving information system on homelessness. For example, we have protocols with the Ministry of Justice, with the Ministry of Employment, in order how to for example, something very important in our national housing plan, we have a specific program to help people who are suffering homelessness, also people who suffer, women who suffer gender violence, and so on. And then there is a specific project and a specific program that, well, the thing is that the ministry have some money to their regions, because the regions in Spain are the competence or the tax to put in practice the policies, of course. But there are a project there are 10 programs, and one of them is directly to homelessness, violence, gender violence, and so on. And then this is the connection with the strategy and the Ministry of Housing. Improve the information and so on. This strategy, these lines nowadays are implemented, and then we will have in our website, if anybody wants to consult the report, the progress report is what has been happening in this last year, in this year, and so on. And then we will this implementation report every year until 2030. This is the period in that this strategy will be functioning, working. And the next slide, because I don't know, perhaps I am consumed many time, I don't know. Okay. And then also what I said before, we want to promote innovation. We have made a lot of programs now financed by our budget and also the European budget to transform the policy to combat the homelessness, to focus on housing, to focus on dignity, human rights, and this is we are convinced that to have a house adequate to a person, to a family, or whatever, is the best solution to abandon, to go out of this situation. And then we bet for this solution. And also this innovation programs of innovation, we have to give visibility, scaling up, and incorporation of learning from ongoing innovative projects. in the development of personalized care methodology with a gender perspective, is what our strategy say. Finally, the conclusion here, well, conclusion, as I said, we need to early identify person who is going to be a homelessness and then to intervene previously. Develop coordination protocols, how I said, with other care system for vulnerable women, system of health system, education system, employment system, justice system, etc. Implement awareness raising and training program for different professionals in the detection of care responses for women homelessness, as well as gender and intersectional approach in the homelessness sector. This means that we need to train the professionals in these kind of issues, and also to prevent, diagnose, care for, and legal report any type of violence against homeless women. Violence who is suffering in the shelters, or who suffer in the streets, or whatever. The next one is another conclusion we have here is we have to develop specialized programs and tailor housing-based response to address women homelessness, incorporate gender approach into homeless services. It's a service for women, but also women to incorporate gender approach in the services in general. No? Improving knowledge of hidden homelessness, including female homelessness. We say before that the problem of women are sometimes hide, and then we have to improve this knowledge. Innovation, transversal gender perspective across the operative lines and national link to the strategy itself, participation, governance, inclusion. As I said in the liberation strategy and now in the implementation, we put the focus also in gender matters, and some NGOs expert in these matters and the Ministry of Equality are working with us in this. And finally, okay, this is all I can like to share with you. I hope you have found interesting our experience. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. It's so important to see that in some of the national strategy, women are present and women are taken into consideration, and to have such a practical example. Thank you for your presentation. And Dalma, the floor is yours to tell us what the EU can do.
Thank you, Silvia. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending the event. I know it's a busy period for everyone, but it's a very important topic, and we really appreciate you being here in the EP building and those who follow us online. In the first part of my talk, I will highlight some of the experiences of women who are homeless and share some of the learnings for policy from FANSA women. You heard already from the panel. I will try not to repeat too much, although we advocates of women's rights and social justice often find ourselves in this situation or in this role. I will conclude with some takeaway ideas and also on how the EU can play a role in this issue. So I'll start with the invisibility of women's homelessness, which was highlighted already. The nature and extent of women's homelessness has long been misunderstood. And we have been talking about the homeless without any framework or evidence of looking into what different groups might need. This resulted in focusing primarily on the visible male homelessness and has led to the setup of mixed services that were built default on the visible majority of men's needs. The problem is that little attention is given to homeless women. They are invisible in data and due to several factors. Firstly, as mentioned, because homelessness has been historically perceived as largely a domain of single men. Secondly, due to measurement, we already heard that as well, that in most countries, homelessness is currently not defined as women experience it. So the current system of measurements and enumeration overlooks women. It focuses on environment that women avoid, and women often use alternative arrangements. According to the recent EU Silk data, 77% of women who have experienced homelessness stayed with family and friends. And we know also that when women do sleep rough, they are not counted or seen because they are hiding, concealing their gender, or moving all night for physical safety, as the example of the London women's rough sleeping census also found. We believe that definitions of homelessness should be as broad as possible and should also include inadequate and insecure housing. For instance, people who are sofa surfing. Sofa surfing is often misunderstood. Many assume, it's one of the myths also around women's homelessness, many assume that staying with family and friends is a safer alternative than staying in big mixed accommodation services. But in reality, however, the situation can be exploitative and frequently poses a significant safety risk. The third reason for women's invisibility is that women delay contact or avoid contact with services. This is due to the perceived shame and stigma and the fear of judgment that creates a significant access barrier. Such multiple stigma is very strong for women because of societal expectations of women. And when women deviate from the traditional gender roles and expectations, for instance, by using drugs, as was mentioned today, they are labeled as failures and judged more harshly. Women also avoid shelters that are not safe for them. To create safety, the most effective response is providing women-only spaces for women, by women, for women. Yet the availability of women-only services is uneven in Europe. Approximately only 10% of accommodation projects are able to offer women-only provisions in their services. When it comes to women's experience of services, they often report a lack of control. Practices in services produce feelings of powerlessness, loss. Women talk about infantilization in services. In general, often they find services difficult and unhelpful, so they opt out and seek solutions independently, as I mentioned earlier. As a result, women are often excluded from support and housing that meets their needs, and the effects of this exclusion are severe. Experience of gender-based violence and abuse are near universal experiences for women who are homeless, and it is the gender-based violence that is the biggest difference between men's and women's homelessness, and the major cause and consequence of women's homelessness. Another effect of women's homelessness is the extreme social and health inequalities women face and the devastating impact it has on their physical and mental health. The manifestation of such extreme health inequalities is that women in homelessness have a shorter life expectancy. The average age of death is just 43-year-old. That's at least 30 years earlier than those who have homes. It's lower than any country in the world. And women experiencing homelessness die even younger than their male counterparts, which is the opposite in the house population. So it's very important to continue to push for the recognition of women's homelessness as an issue, to keep it on the agenda. Women are not a subgroup of the homelessness population, because if we broaden the definition and take into account hidden and family homelessness, we can see that the figures are bigger and women are more present. In fact, right now, women are the fastest growing part of the homelessness population. We saw the huge increase in Spain in the previous presentation. So we can say that it's more a 50-50 problem. The very recent EU Silk population survey confirms this. The survey includes a variety of situations of housing exclusion, and when asked about lifetime experience of homelessness, data is very similar for men and women. 40% 4.8% versus 4.9% for men. When asked about current homelessness, the gap is much bigger, which suggests that there's really a need to better capture women's homelessness. And therefore, it's important to continue our advocacy, even though we have some backlashes in women's rights and anti-gender voices in Europe. It's very important that we talk about this today. Just to add that while the connection between violence and homelessness is clear, it's essential to recognize the structural causes behind it. Violence is closely tied to women's social and economic conditions, as well as broader issues of inequality and marginalization. So gender-based violence isn't the only driver. Other systemic factors, particularly poverty, play a very crucial role in women's homelessness. So in the next session, I would like to share 4 key elements, what makes an effective response to women's homelessness. These 4 elements are human rights and gendered approach. The second one is breaking the cycle of gender-based violence and homelessness with housing. The third one is gendered homelessness strategies. And the fourth is partnerships, joint responsibilities. So firstly, we heard previously housing is a fundamental human rights. An effective response to women's homelessness should be based on the intersectional human rights and gendered approach that recognizes these links between lack of housing, poverty, and gender-based violence, and the intersecting forms of discrimination women experience. Human rights-based approach establishes women as rights holders and states as duty bearers, and it shifts from what is often seen as individual failures to failures of the state's duty and obligation to ensure housing rights. It's maybe worth making a note here. So we know that there are deep-rooted structural factors and other systematic issues that are creating and recreating inequalities and drive homelessness, but it's always the individual who need to navigate and cope with the consequences of these structural issues. And I think it's very important to highlight the complex needs and the vulnerabilities of the individuals. But it is our role to make sure that the personal experience, as bravely shared by T today, are connected to structural problems and to understand how the broader systemic factors and personal strategies come together to create and maintain housing insecurity and instability. And also to recognize the missed opportunities for effective interventions. A second effective response, secondly, an effective response breaks the cycle of gender-based violence and women's homelessness by providing stable housing. Housing provides safety and empowerment, and it is the most effective intervention to address women's homelessness. We heard today that we need rapid access to housing to prevent additional trauma that the experience of homelessness creates. Housing first is a successful and evidence-based approach to address homelessness. However, to be truly effective for women, it needs to be coupled with gender-sensitive services, support, and we also have excellent examples of such service in Europe. Instruments like the Istanbul Convention and the new European Gender-Based Violence Directive, which explicitly mentions homelessness, are important legal tools to combat gender-based violence. But how can they deliver for women who are homeless? We know the reality and reluctance of victims to come forward. Many have complicated issues like homelessness or substance misuse, and these women often suffer in silence, often fear that their children could be taken away from them, which is a major concern. And women who are homeless are often a blind spot for the gender-based violence services, as Boroka's example on women using drugs illustrated that. So if the violence against women movement want to achieve its goals, and the EU takes seriously its ambition on gender equality and combating gender-based violence in Europe, the voices of these women must be heard. And we need a victim-centered approach to all victims of gender-based violence suitable to their circumstances. We also heard in the previous presentation that the prevention of gender-based violence is essential to the effective prevention of women's homelessness. We need to ensure that the new EU gender-based violence directive is integrated into national legislation, prioritizing women's homelessness. We will closely follow the discussions around the national implementation of the directive. The third point, to effectively tackle women's homelessness, we need gender-sensitive homelessness strategies that understand and invest in the unique needs of women. It's very important to acknowledge some of the progress that has been done and acknowledge the good practices and small-scale projects, but too often their availability is limited, and they are often a result of a few or more, the work of committed individuals. But often they are not systematically embedded in policies and don't result in long-term systemic change. What many of our members also report, that often women's homelessness is regarded as an add-on. Therefore, the first thing that goes when project funding is cut or due to other pressures to deliver outcomes. So we need to stress that women's homelessness is not just an additional support need. Gender should be acknowledged and embedded at all levels. And we heard the example of Spain, where successfully, where gender has been meaningfully embedded in the national homelessness strategy. And you said that homelessness strategy is gender informed and intersectional. I would also add that we need homelessness strategies that are also shaped by the experience of women with lived experience of homelessness. We need to value women's voice and listen to their voices and include them in our advocacy efforts as well. Their advocacy is much more valuable. They are the women most impacted by homelessness and poverty. Again, there are good practices that we are collecting in this regard as well. The fourth effective response is partnerships and collaborations. They are key. We heard also that women often need to navigate through disconnected systems, which is an additional challenge when they are dealing with the complex trauma and related complex support needs. And this can leave women without support. I just want to stress that when we talk about complex needs, it doesn't mean that the individual has multiple problems. It just rather means that it's rather the result of single issue system failures that, again, the individual needs to cope with. And these system failures are contributing to women's homelessness. Preventing and ending women's homelessness is not only the responsibility of the homelessness sector. Stakeholders across all relevant sectors, like women's services, domestic violence services, health sector, child protection, criminal justice system, mental health and substance use interventions, they all need to form partnerships and the responsibility in responding and preventing women's homelessness. The team mentioned the NEA example of excellent cooperation of organizations that women who experience homelessness come in touch with. Nobody likes to remember the pandemic, but an important learning and takeaway is that under huge pressure for immediate results, sectors were able to work collaboratively from one day to the next with really good results. With all this in mind, I try to share some takeaway messages. The first one is recognition. by stakeholders at all levels. We need to make sure that women's homelessness is seen as a priority. Women's homelessness should be recognized in definitions, in homelessness counts, in policies, practice, and strategies. We need to ensure that women's homelessness is recognized in EU policy initiatives. We have a newly elected EP with new MEPs, and attention is turning towards the Commission to deliver on its ambition. There are a number of initiatives in the mission letters of the Commission designates. It's important to ensure that women experiencing homelessness are also recognized in these processes. For instance, gender equality is high among the priorities of the new Commission. There are plans for a roadmap for women's rights and a new gender equality strategy. But we need to ensure that women who are homeless are also targeted by the opportunities and resources in the programs under the new strategy. The EU will have a first ever anti-poverty strategy. It's important that the gendered experience of poverty is embedded in this strategy, including women's heightened risk of poverty, homelessness, violence, and discrimination. Another new initiative of the EU on the table is the Affordable Housing Plan. We need to ensure that it supports housing policies that prioritize housing for those in greatest need, including marginalized women. A second takeaway is understanding need. We need a strong knowledge and evidence base. Significant progress has been made on research on women's homelessness, but they lack participatory methods, specifically those that are peer-led, peer-designed, and peer-evaluated. We must prioritize sharing women's experience to deepen our understanding. They have valuable experience of the actual functioning and dysfunctioning of homelessness policies, and also valuable opinion on how it should be changed. The third one is use the available evidence to change policies, and use existing mechanisms like the Istanbul Convention, and use the opportunities like the new EU Gender-Based Violence Directive to push member states for a full and effective implementation by integrating homelessness within national policies on gender-based violence. We need to encourage policymakers to change perspectives and take action. This is the mission of EPOC practice, and Sylvia already mentioned that we had just a training with policymakers and practitioners, and the second round is foreseen for next year because of the high interest. So in conclusion, I invite all of you to reflect on what role you can play in advocating for changes that will improve women's lives, and also to join our community of practice, FEANZA Women. We are working towards ending homelessness. As Ms. Moretti said, we need each other and we need to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalma. And now the difficult role of wrapping up the event. I will give the word to Ruth Owen, Deputy Director of FEANZA.
Okay, thank you. So as Sylvia said, the reason I've been sitting here quietly is because I have the difficult job of, first of all, opening the floor to you and then trying to wrap up. And as we are very behind, I'm still going to try opening the floor and give the possibility for 2 questions. So sorry if I generate frustration and you don't get your question, but I'm going to open the floor now. Over to you. Okay, it's getting late in the evening. Okay, so in that case, I will try and wrap up. It was a really dense and interesting panel with so many different perspectives, from the perspective of MEPs working in the FEM committee at European level, to research practice, policy development, lived experience, and Dalma's reflections at the end on kind of effective advocacy and taking this agenda forward. I think the main thing that I took away from this panel is like, maybe we should stop saying that women's homelessness is hidden. It's not really hidden. It's like, if you don't look for it, you won't find it. And if you don't recognize and listen to homeless women and understand their specific needs in relation to things like health, motherhood, violence, trauma, and heightened stigma, you won't solve homelessness because you'll be missing half the picture. And I think I've been working on homelessness long enough to have heard the kind of cyclical idea like, oh, we can't really do anything about homelessness because we don't really have good enough data, so we don't really know what the reality is. And I think that's kind of times 10 when it comes to the hidden phenomenon of women's homelessness. So it was really fantastic to have this discussion. It's really great that homelessness itself is now reasonably firmly, I would say, on the EU agenda, and that we are catching up in terms of women's homelessness. There are many levers at the European level that we can use to support the fight against women's homelessness. Dalma mentioned a very important one with the directive on gender-based violence. It's fantastic to have had the support of the FEM committee in organising this event, and I have to take my hat off to the committee for being the first ones, I think, to raise homelessness in the whole hearings process that's currently going on with the commissioners designate. So I think that means we're off to a good start, and we look forward to continuing the work both within Fianza and in partnership with other organizations and with the European Parliament and other institutions during this mandate. So thanks everyone. Have a good evening.